Research has long proven that the trauma we suffer as children becomes the baggage that we carry into adulthood. The seeds of the aggression of many adults today may have been planted years ago in the minds and hearts of innocent children.
One of the greatest injustices in Jamaica is the epidemic of sexual abuse of our children, which in some communities is a closely guarded and accepted secret.
Child abuse and the price of silence are our focus this evening on CS311.
Crime Stop Jamaica and National Bakery, in association with TVJ and our sponsors, ICD Group, Grace Kennedy, Home and Things, Progressive Grocers and Guardsman, present CS311 with Deirdre Dixon and Leroy Hall.
It's the classic nightmare. You want to scream but have no voice. You want to run but cannot move. This dream is a reality for hundreds of children in Jamaica, silenced into submission by their sexual abusers.
The perpetrators may not be strangers, but trusted people who are well known to them. Senior Superintendent Charmaine Shand from the Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offences and Child Abuse opened our eyes to the horrors of this problem.
Since the start of this year, the Center for Investigation of Sexual Offences and Child Abuse has appreciated 666 cases of child abuse. Every single member of the public has a responsibility to report sexual offences once they have knowledge. So, based on the numbers that we are seeing, it is obvious that we are getting report from the public. We have a lot of persons that we call walk-in, and those are persons who just walk into the office and report an offense. We have the guidance counselors, I said before. We have the doctors, and sometimes some of these children are taken to the doctors by their parents, and it is at that time that they know that the child has been abused. So we have the public coming forward to report these offenses. And I want to commend especially the guidance counselors and the doctors for sending them to Sissoka so that we can carry out our investigations. We have a lot of cases where children are abused by a relative, very close relative, and it is disturbing because those are the persons that are there to protect us. For instance, right now I am partially disturbed as it relates to a matter that was reported to us where a 5-year-old child was sexually abused by her uncle. We have a lot of boys these days being abused, and before now we hardly had parents coming forward with boys, but they are coming forward and they are reporting these offenses. We have a lot of cases that are reported to Sissoka officers that you see the disparity in age. For instance, you'll have a 60-odd-year-old man molesting a 12-year-old child. Those are disturbing. There are a lot of cases that are reported, especially at the beginning of summer, where children would leave their homes to go and meet persons that they met on Facebook. This young girl left her home to meet one person, and when she went to the home, it was 2 other persons that were there, and she was raped. As a matter of fact, in most of our investigations, we find that you'll have a parent that come to report an uncontrollable child or a child in need of care and protection, and during our investigation, we find out that this child is being abused. So I want to say to parents that they need to monitor their children, and they need to sit and have conversations with their children. They need to listen to them. They need to tell them about the do's and the don'ts. There was a time that we used to tell children to be careful of strangers, but the fact that children are now being abused by their very own relatives, we just need to do some education and tell them what is right from what is wrong, what is a good touch, what is a bad touch.
Thank you, Superintendent Shan. Yesterday, we were the village that raised the children. Nowadays, even parents, grandparents, teachers, friends are not above suspicion.
To understand why they say child abuse is an epidemic in Jamaica, We need look no further than the numbers.
The greatest irony about child sexual abuse is that it happens in places that should be safe: their homes, their schools, and their communities. Did you know that globally, it is estimated that up to 1 billion children aged 2 to 17 years have experienced physical, sexual, or emotional violence or neglect in the past year? 1 out of 3 of these child victims tell no one about their abuse. Even within families, many adults turn a blind eye to inappropriate sexual treatment of a child, which often leads to more explicit forms of abuse. Girls account for well over 90% of victims, but boys are still in danger. According to a UNICEF Jamaica report, in 2016, more than 1,147 children were victims of sexual assault, whether through sexual grooming, inappropriate touching, or rape. And the reports seem to be climbing. The Children Protection and Family Services Agency reported that they received approximately 1,200 reports of child sexual abuse, including incest, in a given month in 2018. Not surprisingly, the link between crime and abuse is very clear, as reports of child abuse are more frequent in crime-torn communities. If you know of any child that is the victim of abuse, sexual or otherwise, please call the numbers on your screen. Children are our responsibility. We owe it to them to protect them. It began with an early morning routine. A father dropping his young son off at school. Ainsley Folks then headed out to his car to face the rest of his day. But what did the day have in store for him?
The story continues in this, our Unsolved Crime.
Monday, November 12, 2018, at about 7:35 a.m. Ainsley Folks, otherwise called Ricky or Lobsterman, dropped his son off at school on Terrace Avenue, Kingston 10. He returned to his car and paused to check his messages. A white-capped man approached. There was a brief conversation. And then, suddenly, the gunman escaped on foot. Meanwhile, Ainsley Folks exited the car and collapsed on the sidewalk outside the school. Passers-by assisted him to a car and drove him to the Kingston Public Hospital, where Ainsley Folks was pronounced dead.
Did the man behind this gun think twice before spilling blood at the very gates of a schoolyard? We grieve for the children, and especially for the little boy who lost his father that day. More after this. One dead and countless others traumatized. Tonight, we ask for your help to solve this crime.
I was at work when I got a call from the school asking me to rush to the hospital because my brother was shot. So on my way there, the person who had rushed him to the hospital kept calling me and asked me how far I was. And at that time when I said, "What did he say?" he said to me, "Didn't tell you. He was killed. He died on the spot." At that time I was driving, I had to pull off the road. I wasn't expecting that. After all that, the whole day with the police, because this was like, I was at work like at 7:30, 8 o'clock they called me. And I was the one who had to go and identify his body at the morgue. It was my first experience, and the police had to hold me because I really broke down. The family needs to know who and why he was killed. He has 2 children below the age of 10. His mother is also in shock as she cannot understand why someone would kill her son.
His employees are also in shock, wondering why. He was his children's only means of support. He was a single parent who was growing his only son by himself, as the mother does not live in Jamaica. I don't know how to describe it, but losing a loved one in that way, it's not an easy road. You don't know when you're gonna get peace, because every now and again, it comes back to you. I don't know what is gonna happen next month on the day that it happened, on the anniversary. I don't know what is going to happen, but it really tears us apart. So if anyone knows why this thing happened, we are asking, please call Crime Stop and give the information.
Crime Stop Jamaica is offering a reward totaling $200,000 for information leading to the arrest and charge of the persons responsible. The criminals are holding us at gunpoint, directly and indirectly. The man or men behind this must be stopped. Our concern tonight is our children and their abuse. But let's pause a moment to turn the spotlight on our missing. Have you seen them? Can you help?
Missing, brought to you by Progressive Grocers. An Ananda alert has been activated for 15-year-old Sandrine Watt of Lilliput, St. James. She has been missing since Wednesday, April 4, 2018. She's of brown complexion, medium build, and 157 centimeters or 5 feet 2 inches tall. Sandrine Watt was last seen at about 11:10 a.m. in the St. James Family Court and has not been seen since. She was wearing a yellow dress, grey sweater, and a pair of white slippers. An Ananda alert has been activated for 17-year-old Kamisha Nugent, a ward of the state at the Granville Childcare Facility in Trelawney. She has been missing since Saturday, October 27, 2018. She's of dark complexion, medium build, and 165 centimeters or 5 feet 5 inches tall. Kamisha was last seen at midday at the Falmouth Health Centre, dressed in a navy blue cap, rose pink blouse, blue jeans, and black sneakers. Xavier Nelson, a 26-year-old taxi operator of Hopefield Drive, Maypen, Clarendon, has been missing since March 22, 2018. He is of dark complexion, slim build, and 187 centimeters or 6 feet 2 inches tall. Xavier Nelson was last seen at home at 7:45 p.m., wearing a white t-shirt, brown jeans, and white slippers.
How well do you know what's happening around you? And to go even further, how well do you know the people around you? This week, we switch it up on Watch That Scam.
Hey, brother, yeah, man. Yo. You know you want to the little girl. You need a lighter, man. From down the lane. Little girl. Which lane you talk about? Little girl from down the lane, man. Me hear so them can't find her. Look like them kidnap her. Suppose her boyfriend she gone with. Boyfriend? The little girl is only 13 years old. What kind of boyfriend thing you talk about? Yo, them little girl ya have sex long time. You know, see the little short so them a walk up and down with each up underneath them rear. I want to you. Virgin, you know how much women still in the world in some tribe where them still a walk half naked and all naked. I mean, I think the man them a jump on them like say boy them a some little piece of meat like how me see the man them a jump on the little pitney them round here. You know, say you talk like say you woulda. Me woulda what? Me woulda what? You know what's happening? You know, say me have to start to watch some of them youth around here from now on. Because them a move low, you know, man. The other day. Hey, Cindy. I bring something for you, you know. This kind of scenario plays out all too often in our society. Sick and sad. If you or someone you know has these tendencies, you must seek help. Please, me I beg you, leave our children alone. If you know something, you must say something.
Why not build a world in which we all advocate for the rights of the child officially or not? Their future, our future depends on it. When we raise the topic of child sexual abuse in Jamaica, girls immediately come to mind. But what about the growing number of boys who fall through the cracks after becoming victims of a child predator?
The Office of the Children's Advocate and its head, Diane Gordon Harris, are watchdogs for children's rights. She spoke to us about boys in the shadow of sexual abuse.
So there is increased attention that's being given to male victims who happen to be child abuse victims. And I think it's because there's a shift in the dialogue, because predominantly the conversation has featured girls as victims. But we recognize that boys have always been victims, but just silently so. And perhaps that's because of the societal taboos that we have on especially sexual violations of men. We think that, boys are usually the ones who are the hunters. And so if a boy is to complain that he has been sexually abused, then he's seen as less than male. And I think that has culturally affected how we've treated with the problem. And so, of course, there's a direct impact, if you will, on how we focus rehabilitation programs for boys who have been violated. But it's a good thing, I think, that we're beginning to involve them in the conversation and feature them as victims. The issue of child abuse and what we call adverse childhood experiences, or the ACEs, if you will, have been documented now, and there have been longitudinal studies that have been done, particularly overseas, which say that it is a fact, a scientific fact, that if you undergo severe experiences of child abuse during your childhood, it's going to have implications for your adult life. So we've seen, for example, where girls in particular who are sexually violated or who are abused in some way by men who live in their circle, ultimately, as a predictor, if you will, once they become adults, they become more susceptible to relationships where there's domestic violence or intimate partner violence. We've seen as well whereby boys who grow up in certain environments, they see certain things, they become exposed to certain things, or they're involved in perpetrating certain acts. They in turn become probable victims because they're now going to be recruited by gangs who recognize that they're already at risk. So there is documented evidence that shows that sometimes they end up in a life of crime, sometimes the girls as well end up in prostitution, and other times it's not deviant behavior that is criminalized, but it certainly has an impact on their professional and their social development, because a lot of them have post-traumatic stress disorder, suffer from depression, suicidal ideations and attempts, and really just a psychological difficulty to have normal relationships throughout their adult life. Resources are available for both boys and girls who happen to be the victims of abuse. We tend to operate a system in Jamaica where we focus on child abuse, which is gender neutral in terms of the harm that the child is exposed to. And certainly from the perspective of the Office of the Children's Advocate, we ensure that each child is taken as you find him or her, whether male or female, and that child's best interests are assessed and in fact prioritized through any kind of approach or treatment plan that is created for the child. And so the resources are there. I think where the deficits may be, however, is that we need to continue that conversation of empowerment, that conversation of destigmatization, so that boys feel comfortable enough disclosing that they've been violated and empowered to go through with the process. And that kind of intervention has to come not just in terms of directed to the boys, but the support systems that surround them, so that the parents can enable them to come forward and assist them throughout the process.
As tragic as it is, we can no longer afford to keep our children sheltered.
A simple discussion with your child might protect them at those times when you can't be there to shield them. These safety tips will help.
Safety Tips, sponsored by Guardsman.
Our children are our pride and joy, and we want to be there for them all the time. We want to go everywhere and be there for them, but we can't. We have to let them grow up, we have to let them develop, we have to expose them to situations so that they can handle themselves in the growing process. They need to be able to say who they are and with whom they belong. They need to be able to give the names, their names. They need to give the names of their parents, the mother, the father, the grandfather, grandparents, aunts, uncles. They need to know their addresses. They need to know the contact telephone number for their mother or their father. You need to rehearse this with them so that in any emergency or any eventuality, they will be able to give information to those who may come to their assistance. We need to teach your children that they never take food from strangers, never to go anywhere with a stranger. And you as a parent need to also practice that. You can't send a stranger to pick up your child from school. You can't send a stranger to pick up your child from home. If the strangers are trying to force them and coerce them, teach them to run away and call for help. Practice that with them. Develop a password system with the child. That way, whoever comes to take them anywhere will have to give that password before they willingly go with them. The other thing that we must teach our children is the difficult one. We must tell them touching is sometimes inappropriate. There's good touching and there's bad touching. Explain it to them. Go through who are the people who can touch them the good way. The bad way, they must let mommy and daddy know and raise an alarm to that. It's a difficult one, but we must teach our children about good touching and bad touching. As they grow a little older, you educate them why and what are some of the dangers involved. We also need to teach our children that if they ever get lost, stay where you are, because as parents or whoever they were there with, will go back to the last place that they were seen and will find them. If they see mothers with other children, then they can approach that mother and say, I am lost. Or they can go to the counter of the store, the supermarket, wherever, and say to the cashier or the person behind the desk, I am lost, and share the information with them as to who they are and who they are at the store with. These things will keep our children safe. Remember, our children, they are our pride and joy as parents. To our community and our country, our children are the future.
Criminals prey on the innocent and the unsuspecting. Prepare yourself and your family and speak out to protect others.
The words crime and children should never exist in the same sentence. Yet, too many of our children bear the scars of violence and abuse and the guilt, shame, and confusion that comes with it.
Today's murderer may have been yesterday's victim. As we work towards a crime-free Jamaica, let's begin with our children. I am Deidre Dixon.
And I'm Leroy Hall. CS311 returns next week.